floods in KZN. The heavy downpours since the weekend has triggered flash floods that swept away bridges and homes, vehicles and roads in KwaZulu-Natal. Hundreds of people have been left homeless. What role, therefore, can the business community play in trying to assist with this disaster? We're joined now by Business Unity South Africa President Bonang Mohale, who joins us for this conversation. Prof, thank you very much for your time. Before we drill deeper into some of the issues here, can I get your reaction to the disaster that is unfolding in KZN once again?
This is very sad, tragic and regrettable, Babu Kholi. Our thoughts are with the 45 families that have lost their loved ones and significant relationships by lunchtime yesterday. By the time we woke up, in fact, we went to bed last night, that number had increased to 59 and still counting. By this morning, that number would probably be approaching 80. So first and foremost, I think we need to be talking to government, as we are, to declare KwaZulu-Natal a state of national disaster for a number of reasons. One, this province has just emerged from the 2 weeks in July of rampant looting, where 20 billion rand was lost, probably 354 lives were lost. Now we're going to pile on another 100 by the end of this week. Number two, remember that the South African economy is twice as large as that of Ukraine. In fact, Ukraine's economy is the same size as the Gauteng economy, which is 30% of national GDP. KwaZulu-Natal is the second largest at 16%, larger than the Western Cape at 14%. So at the time that the pandemic had compromised the supply chains and the economy was already suffering, so are human lives and livelihoods. Now we are confronted with these floods that happen every year, as if we have not planned and have not anticipated this. Lastly, I think this is more a lack of service delivery. One, because the stormwater drains that are supposed to be absorbing this water are not maintained, are not cleaned. Therefore, the roads are becoming raging torrent rivers. People's homes have become rivers. We saw images of houses just being consumed by Mother Earth. Secondly, it's also lack of service delivery, because at the time that we are struggling with electricity supply, with the fourth means of production, now we are struggling with issues of water. You see, Toli, when you steal money, eventually it runs out. Now we are at a crossroad where we can't even provide basic, fundamental human rights enshrined in our constitution to our own people. So the people who call themselves our leaders must love their people in order to lead them. Lastly, you know, Poli, there's a road that leads to the port called Bayswater. There's a sinkhole that has developed. At the time that Transnet's own Durban port is now the third worst in the world, it is the spine, the backbone of the infrastructure of this country. This is where we move goods and services. Transnet can move that through rail. They can't move it even through cargo, through their aeroplanes, because this 85-year-old award-winning South African Airways is just beginning their services to KwaZulu-Natal. So we are now using roads. One freight company is losing 150 million rand in profits a month. If you add 10 of these companies, you're talking about 2 billion rand a month, every month, that this economy is losing. This is over and above the economy having lost 50 billion between KwaZulu-Natal and just Gauteng in the 2 weeks in July of rampant looting.
Professor Mohale, you've said a mouthful there, and a couple of points you have made, but I think the one that leads me to my next question has to do with what you have said, that this is a direct result of a lack of service delivery when you talk about the maintenance of the stormwater drainage systems, but also the issue of corruption. And that leads me to ask the question that we have seen in previous experiences. If you look at a province like the Northwest, where businesses literally packed up and went to the next best province because that's where they could conduct businesses, where services like water and electricity, roads, that's where they could find that kind of infrastructure in order for them to conduct business. How much of an interruption to supply chain processes is this going to be, particularly stemming from KwaZulu-Natal?
Only you have hit the nail on the head, my dear brother. You see, of the 11 warehouses that were burned and 8 factories on the 19th of July when we took a tally, Samsung is one of those companies that have said, we are not rebuilding in KwaZulu-Natal, even if the insurance pays us. We'll go to another country. At the very worst, we'll go to the Western Cape, because it seems like at least there is law and order. I think what we are going to see more than anything else is the investors, the rating agencies, and the analysts looking at only 4 things and 4 things only when they assess countries like ourselves. Number 1, they are looking at our economic strength. Number 2, at our fiscal strength. Number 3, at our institutional strength. The last one is our susceptibility to major risk events. This flood, it's a major risk event, even though it happens every year. Clearly, I'm not even talking about special planning, where black people are still living on average 40 kilometers away from their places of work, therefore consuming 40 minutes each way going to work, 40 minutes going back, thereby consuming 40% of their monthly wages. When you add food, that's 70% of their monthly wages, making it impossible for them to save. I'm not even talking about that. I'm simply talking about the 1.5 trillion rand that we stole through state capture in the first 9 wasted years. I'm talking about the 200 billion we are still siphoning off just to the 2 Zupta families in the 9 wasted years, on average a year, every year. I'm talking about what we are still continuing to steal from the mouths of babies, the sick, the infirm, and the dying through PPE procurement, when we are supposed to be providing relief to our own people. New Zealand demonstrated beyond any shadow of doubt that during a pandemic, the 5 million New Zealanders came together and saying we are going to defeat and root out this pandemic. What did South Africans do? We're not even talking about 2 critical issues. We as business, one saying this notion of common purpose and greater good. We are telling our members, go out there and provide humanitarian assistance to young babies that can go to school, people that can get access to water, people that can warm their water because there is no electricity. Because, as I conclude, Babu Kholi, South Africa is now teetering on the brink of being a failed state. You see countries like farms, like airlines, take a long time to die. In 28 years, we accelerated our growth and fixed the problems of apartheid. Now we have gone back in reverse gear to a worse state than we were. In fact, we have taken this economy back 20 years. Babu Kholi.
Professor Mohale, I'm going to ask you 2 questions in one because of time constraints. The point you're making, that South Africa is now teetering on the brink of a failed state, and these floods have basically taken us an inch closer. Are you saying that we're likely to see a reversal of what ratings agency Moody's has done to move us from negative, I think, to stable in terms of our credit rating? But also the other question here, Professor Mohale, has to do with exactly what you have just alluded to, that what are you telling your business members within the umbrella body of BUSA. And I say this because in 2017, we saw big business digging deep into their pockets to help out with the Newzroom fires as part of the humanitarian assistance. What can you do this time in monetary terms?
So we celebrate Moody's outlook from negative to stable. But remember, we are still below investment grade. Therefore, the cost of borrowing for government, for business, and for Oli and Bonang are still higher for the same quantum of debt. In fact, we have become poorer. What are we telling our members? We're telling our members that we need to continue to do the good things. We need to continue to think of our people first. We need to continue to lead the GBB fund by business contributing. We're saying to our members, we contributed the first tranche and the second tranche in getting us to the COVAX program and the African Union program when we wanted to fight the pandemic. We raised 3.2 billion rand in a matter of a week in the Solidarity Fund chaired by Adrian Endhoven as the deputy and Matt Tomato, Gloria Serobe as the chairperson to respond to this. We are saying as business, we need to continue to do well by doing good. Because when business does well, society generally does well. The people who come from labor, some labor organizations that are looking at business and say, but business is enemy number one, are misquoting and misunderstanding Karl Marx. Because you cannot go to war and leave a significant component of your own community, which is business, behind. Business, as we speak, employs 13.5 million people. Government, 2.3 million people. Foreign direct investment is fronted by direct domestic investment by business. Infrastructure is being driven by business. Most of the things that are supposed to be delivered by government are actually being done by business. We say to our members, you don't need government's permission to pay your own suppliers in 30 days. We measured in those that are paying them in 7 days in terms of small and medium enterprises. You don't need government's permission as business to close the gender equality gap and the pay parity gap. If you are the CEO, ask your human resource department on Monday how you are paying women compared to men for work of the same value. There are some things that we must do as business because this country is as much ours as it belongs to this ANC-led government, as it belongs to labor, as it belongs to civil society. Babu Koli.